We, the Kenyan people, deserve leaders we can trust. Leaders who will be honest with us, even when it's difficult. But for too long, we have witnessed the consequences of dishonesty in our political landscape. From grand campaign promises that vanish into thin air to blatant misuse of public funds, the impact is felt in every corner of our society. Our children's education suffers, healthcare remains a dream for many, and opportunities slip through our fingers. When those in power choose deceit, it is the ordinary Kenyan who pays the price. We, as Kenyans, must confront this issue head-on. Our future, our children's future, depends on it. It's time for a new chapter, one where integrity and accountability are the foundation of our leadership. History has a way of reminding us of lessons learned, or in some cases, lessons we've yet to fully grasp. Kenya's past is marked by instances where political dishonesty has left scars that linger to this day. Remember the promises made during elections, only to be forgotten once those elected took office? Hospitals lack basic supplies, schools crumble due to lack of maintenance, and roads remain impassable, hindering economic growth. The weight of these unkept promises falls heavily on the shoulders of hardworking Kenyans. Each instance of dishonesty chips away at the very fabric of our society, eroding the trust that binds us together as a nation. Trust, once broken, is a fragile thing to rebuild. When our leaders consistently resort to lies and deception, it chips away at the very foundation of our democracy. Over time, this erosion of trust has created a deep sense of disillusionment among Kenyans. We see it in the declining voter turnout, the apathy towards public affairs, and the cynicism that greets any new government initiative. This loss of trust has far-reaching consequences. It undermines the legitimacy of our institutions, fuels social unrest, and creates a fertile ground for impunity to thrive. We become stuck in a quagmire of suspicion and doubt, hindering our collective progress. Kenya, like any nation, has its share of shadows lurking behind moments of national pride. These shadows often take the form of scandals, moments when the trust between the people and those in power was shattered. We're not talking about mere political disagreements here, but about instances where dishonesty, greed, and a blatant disregard for the public good took center stage. Each scandal chipped away at the faith we had in those meant to lead, to protect, to serve. These ghosts of scandals past serve as stark reminders of what happens when those entrusted with power choose personal gain over the well-being of the nation. The Goldenberg scandal, a name etched in infamy, remains a stark reminder of the devastating impact of high-level corruption in Kenya. Imagine this: a scheme so audacious, so intricately woven into the fabric of government that it siphoned billions of shillings from public coffers. The consequences were dire. The Kenyan shilling plummeted, inflation skyrocketed, and the economy reeled under the weight of this monumental fraud. The Goldenberg scandal eroded public trust in the government, leaving behind a sense of betrayal that lingered for years. It exposed the vulnerability of our institutions to greed and manipulation, highlighting the urgent need for transparency and accountability. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and the ghost of another scandal rears its ugly head: the Anglo Leasing affair. This time, it involved phantom projects, inflated contracts, and a trail of shell companies designed to siphon off public funds. Imagine this: contracts worth millions of dollars signed and sealed for security projects that never materialized. The Anglo Leasing scandal shook Kenya to its core, exposing the deep-rooted culture of impunity that had taken hold. Essential services were starved of funds, development projects stalled, and the credibility of the government took a severe blow. The Anglo Leasing scandal served as a wake-up call for Kenyans, igniting a demand for accountability and an end to the culture of impunity. Imagine baking a cake with your children, the excitement in their eyes as they measure flour and crack eggs. You promise them a delicious treat, only to swap out the sugar with salt at the last moment. The cake emerges, a salty disaster, the children's faces crumpled in disappointment. This, my friends, is what it feels like when politicians make promises they don't keep. The sweet taste of hope, The belief that things can be better is replaced by the bitterness of betrayal. With each broken promise, with each scandal swept under the rug, the scent of betrayal lingers, eroding the very foundation of trust between the people and their elected officials. It's the young graduate who remains unemployed because the job creation initiatives were nothing more than empty slogans. Section 2. From cynicism to apathy, the price of broken promises. When promises are broken repeatedly, a sense of cynicism sets in. People become wary of any pronouncements, any grand plans announced with much fanfare. This cynicism is dangerous because it can easily morph into apathy, a sense of resignation that things will never change. People become disillusioned with the political process, convinced that their voices don't matter, that their votes can't make a difference. This apathy is a slow poison, eating away at the very fabric of our democracy. When citizens disengage, it creates a fertile ground for corruption and impunity to thrive. It allows those in power to operate with unchecked authority, knowing that they are unlikely to be held accountable for their actions. Section 3. A generation disillusioned. Youth and the crisis of trust. Nowhere is the crisis of trust more evident than among Kenya's youth. This generation, born in the shadow of multi-party democracy, has witnessed firsthand the shortcomings of our political system. They've grown up hearing tales of corruption scandals, of unfulfilled promises, of a leadership often more concerned with self-preservation than with serving the people. This constant exposure to political dishonesty has left many young Kenyans disillusioned and disengaged. They are skeptical of politicians, wary of their motives, and unconvinced by their rhetoric. They see a disconnect between the promises made and the realities they face daily. Some young people choose to tune out completely, becoming apathetic towards politics and civic engagement. Others channel their frustration into activism, demanding greater accountability and transparency from their leaders. Section 4. The spiral of silence. When speaking up seems futile. Imagine a village where everyone knows the well is poisoned, but no one dares to speak up for fear of retribution. This, my friends, is what happens when a culture of fear takes root, when speaking truth to power is met with intimidation or worse. In such an environment, a spiral of silence descends. People become hesitant to express dissenting views, to challenge the status quo, or to hold their leaders accountable. They remain silent, not out of agreement, but out of a sense of self-preservation. This silence, however, is not a sign of acquiescence. Breaking this spiral of silence requires courage, collective action, and a commitment to protecting those who dare to speak truth to power. Section 1. Development derailed, the high cost of deceit. Imagine a farmer planting seeds in barren land, his brow furrowed with worry. He toils tirelessly, nurturing his crops, dreaming of a bountiful harvest. But his hopes wither and die as the rains fail to come, leaving him with nothing but parched earth and empty promises. This, my friends, is the tragic reality of development projects in Kenya. Projects envisioned to uplift communities, to bring progress and prosperity, but often left to flounder due to the insidious disease of corruption. Section 2. Empty promises, empty stomachs, the real victims. While those in power line their pockets with ill-gotten gains, it is the ordinary Kenyan who bears the brunt of their greed. It's the mother who has to walk miles to fetch water because the promised pipeline was never built. It's the child who goes to bed hungry because the funds meant for school feeding programs vanished into thin air. The consequences of political dishonesty are not abstract concepts. They are real-life struggles faced by millions of Kenyans every single day. For them, corruption is not just a word in a newspaper headline. It's the difference between hope and despair, between a life of dignity and a constant struggle for survival. Section 3. Beyond statistics, the human face of corruption. We often hear statistics about corruption, figures that boggle the mind and numb the senses. But beyond these numbers lie real stories, human tragedies that rarely make it to the front pages. It's the young entrepreneur denied a loan because he refused to pay a bribe, his business dreams crushed under the weight of corruption. It's the family who lost a loved one in a preventable accident because safety regulations were ignored, sacrificed at the altar of profit. These are the faces of corruption, the human cost of dishonesty that we must never forget. Section 4. A nation held hostage, the grip of impunity. Imagine a beautiful land blessed with abundant resources, its people known for their resilience and warmth. But this land is held captive by an invisible force, a suffocating grip that stifles progress and chokes the very life out of its dreams. This, my friends, is the reality of Kenya, a nation held hostage by the grip of impunity. This impunity breeds a culture of fear, where speaking truth to power is deemed too risky, where whistleblowers are silenced and accountability remains an elusive dream. Section 1. A people's uprising, when silence is no longer an option. Imagine a quiet forest, sunlight filtering through the leaves, a gentle breeze rustling the branches. Suddenly, a single bird begins to sing, its voice piercing the tranquility. Soon, another joins in, then another, until the forest erupts in a chorus of sound, a symphony of defiance against the encroaching silence. This, my friends, is what happens when the burden of injustice becomes too heavy to bear, when the pain of broken promises outweighs the fear of speaking out. Throughout Kenya's history, there have been moments when this collective spirit has ignited, when ordinary citizens have set aside their differences and united against a common enemy: corruption. Section 2. The power of one, the strength of many. Voices of dissent. Every great movement, every fight for justice begins with a single voice, a lone candle flickering in the darkness. In Kenya, we have been blessed with courageous individuals who dared to speak truth to power, who refused to be silenced by threats or intimidation. They come from all walks of life: journalists who risked their lives to expose corruption, activists who mobilized communities against land grabbing, ordinary citizens who stood up to demand better services. Each act of defiance, no matter how small, chips away at the wall of impunity, inspiring others to find their voice and join the chorus of dissent. These individuals remind us that we are not powerless, that our voices matter, and that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, hope can ignite a revolution. Section 3. From street protests to digital activism, the fight for transparency. Remember the days when the only way to make your voice heard was to take to the streets, to march in protest, to risk arrest and brutality? Today, the battleground for transparency has expanded, encompassing the digital realm, where information flows freely and the power of social media can mobilize millions. From online petitions that gather thousands of signatures to hashtags that trend nationwide, Kenyans are leveraging technology to hold their leaders accountable. Citizen journalists use smartphones to document corruption, whistleblowers use secure platforms to expose wrongdoing, and online communities provide a space for open dialogue and debate. This digital revolution has empowered a new generation of activists, providing them with the tools to bypass traditional media and communicate directly with the public. It has created a space where information is shared, scrutinized, and amplified, making it increasingly difficult for those in power to operate in the shadows. Section 4. The power of the ballot, choosing integrity over empty promises. The fight against corruption is a marathon, a relay race where each generation passes on the baton of responsibility. We must never forget the power of the ballot box, the power to choose leaders who reflect our values. Election Day is an opportunity to reclaim our power and send a clear message against dishonesty. It's about scrutinizing candidates and demanding accountability. Choosing integrity over empty promises is how we break the cycle of corruption. Reclaiming our narrative, a call to action. My fellow Kenyans, we've journeyed through struggles. We've seen wounds inflicted by dishonesty, trust eroded by broken promises. But let us not be defined by these challenges. Let us rise and change our narrative. The power rests in our hands. It lies in active citizenship. Demand more from our leaders. Hold them accountable. The promise of a new Kenya. I believe in the resilience of the Kenyan spirit, our capacity for compassion, innovation, and justice, rooted in countless acts of courage and kindness. Imagine a Kenya where children dream without limitations. This is the Kenya we must strive for. The journey won't be easy. There will be setbacks and moments of doubt, but we are not alone in this fight. Progress is driven by those who demand better. This is the legacy we must leave, built on truth, accountability, and shared commitment. Let us move forward with hope and determination.